Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Welcome back to the Resupply with me, Guy Next Door.
And me, DK.
Bringing you your fanless double tap of all things Space Marines and Laser Force. Hello, DK. How are you, mate? Good to see you.
I'm doing good.
Oh, that's good. It's always
good.
weird.
Got the new color. I'm out of school, so
Wait, are you
all set?
Is it like term break or some?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, basically.
Spring break? Is that what that is?
Summer break.
Is it summer? Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, almost.
Yeah, almost. Well, it looks good. Looks fresh.
Remember, it's getting colder where you are, which means the opposite's happening here.
Yes.
Boy, is the opposite happening here.
So
Actually, today's not that bad, but it was just quite warm the other day.
It's to be fair, I had a look out the window today, and the weather is marvelous. So it doesn't feel like winter today, but that's okay.
So yeah, perfect time to spend 12 hours indoors watching Lord of the Rings.
Exactly right. Silly.
Bringing
man.
it back.
It's always weird when one of us isn't here. Just feels like there's a voice missing. And we'll do.
But that's why we got a replacement.
Yeah, we'll do our best to fill that hole, but we'll bring them in very, very shortly. Couple of things we want to talk about first. Obviously, good morning to you, chat. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hello to everyone. Very nice to see. Oh, Stu, 16 months prime sub. Wow, that's a big notification.
The Stu man.
Lights. Thank you. Well, that leads me to my first point. This week we hit a milestone here on the Resupply channel. We passed over 500 followers on Twitch, which is pretty damn awesome. It normally it's taken like almost 2 years exactly to get to that point. So huge thank you to all you guys who come and hang out with us on the regular, who decide to give us your hard-earned money to show us some love, to show us some support. We really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Stu, thanks for sharing your Prime sub with us. Really appreciate it. But yeah, it's I think Blueson said it best. Like 500 is kind of like it's kind of that second major milestone. So once you hit like affiliate on Twitch, 500 is kind of that next massive one. And then once you get to there, things kind of escalate a little quicker because more people sort of get eyes on your channel. I'm not sure if that'll be the case for us, because what we do is...
Assuming you haven't plateaued, because you have a very niche audience, of course.
Yeah. What we do is very, very niche, so...
yeah, I mean, I'm sure, just like Blueson's channel, obviously, we have a very broad demographic, and we're equally as famous as the members of these four walls, so I'm sure we're going to take off. We're going to go to the moon, as the kids say.
That's what they all say. I've just realized that's off. I'm going to slide that. That's going to set everything else fucking askew, but that's okay. We'll just fix things on the fly. 500 followers in, still things are bung, but that's okay. So thank you guys so much for all the love and support that you give us. We really, really appreciate it all. We'll continue making amusing content for you all, as long as it holds our interest and holds yours. I guess first and foremost, we do the podcast, like we said in the beginning, we do the podcast mostly for us, and hopefully other people like to listen to it as well. But it's always nice when people dig what you do. So yeah, hopefully you guys still do. That's the first thing. So well done to you, DK. Good job. You did a good job. Well done.
Yep, no problem. That was all me. Woo.
Woo. Second
Honestly,
thing.
pounding that ad revenue.
Someone's got to do it. Second thing. We've got some new emotes. Our friend, everyone's friend, Lucy, all the way from the Czech Republic. She's been hard at work creating some awesome new emotes and stuff for us. So There are
Like this one.
they
Or this one.
I really dig them. I really like them. Lucy, I've seen you some messages about them. We'll talk about it later. I had to edit a couple of them. So if you're like, hey, that's not what I made, that's why. So just don't be alarmed. But
I get it. You're cutting out my deltoid because you're jealous. I understand.
Yeah, that neck. Oof. Can't have more than the neck, all right? Serious question. Where is your Twitch cat ears? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. That doesn't seem like a serious question. But yeah, I really like them. Thank you very much for your hard work. Battle chest duck. You guys are throwing all sorts of references in here that I don't understand.
I don't know what these kids are saying.
Yeah, kids in your cookie language. But yeah, I'll also update Lucy Volvo. I'll also update the creator badge thingy after the podcast. So I'll get those sorted for you. Third thing, I was talking to. We didn't get to play lasers this week. I was gonna talk about it last week, but obviously we were busy with Lord of the Rings. But I had a chat with ownership at Laser Force about the what's the best way to the New Zealand Invitational, whatever
Sure.
random draw kind of tournament that we're looking at hosting down here. I had a chat with them. They said that they are keen. They're on board. They've given us a date because I basically said sometime mid to late September, early October, mid-October, and they said, well, school holidays starts basically start of October, so I think that the dates are going to work out to be the week of the 26th of September. So if people want to have a look at their calendars, let me know over the next couple of weeks whether or not those dates work out. But it will likely be the 26th of September for either probably 4 days if people are keen, 5 days. But we've got ownership are really supportive of us and stuff that we want to do. I don't have any prices or anything as of yet. That stuff's to be determined. But
Frantically starts to justify buying New Zealand plane ticket.
Look, if you've got a choice about whether or not you want to come out at the end of this year or next year, choose next year. If you could
No, this wouldn't be an either or. This would be like let me stretch out my my financial capabilities here a little
possibly
bit.
do too. I mean, if you could swing it, do both.
If I could, yeah.
If
That's gonna be kind of a tall ask.
Nah, you'll be right. You'll be right. See previous statements about ad revenue. But yeah, so it'll likely be the 26th of September. So if anyone out there is, shut up, motorbike. If anyone out there is keen, let me know during either the week or 2 weeks.
Resupply go.
DK just move to New Zealand. You should just move to New Zealand. You could teach correspondence, right? You could teach on. Do you still teach over Zoom or whatever?
Yeah, I have. I'll be back on a 100% online teaching schedule come fall. Fortunately for me, so
you could do it because the time
theoretically
difference
possible
actually works out all right. I think you just have to.
have some
kind of mornings here.
That's the only way I would honestly be able to even potentially swing coming to New Zealand in the fall is because I'd be able to do stuff remotely.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll cross that bridge later.
But yeah, Al, have a chat with your boys. Okay, have a chat with your boys. See if you can come over. But yeah, at this stage, like nothing's concrete. But those don't book anything yet. Just talk to me before you do. But those are kind of the rough dates. What does DK teach? Well, he about to school us on some Laser Force ways. That's what he's teaching. Teaching the ways of the Force. Sorry, there's some noise.
I feel like my Twitch handle kind of gives it away.
This, my friends, is Fireball. All right, enough of that. There's he can't tell you it's ancient history. Outstanding.
Moving right along, let's get to our guest.
Clearly, you've heard that joke before. Yeah, let's bring our guest. So we oh damn it, we like to think that we know a lot about Laser Force here on the Resupply channel. After my recent trip over to the States and seeing firsthand how this player approaches the teaching of Laser Force, I realized that we are woefully underfunded, I'm going to go with, here in Auckland. But let's bring in our guest. I'll switch across here. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Resupply Podcast, our good friend Thunder. G'day, mate. How are you?
Oh.
It's good to see you.
Oh, hello. Good to see you guys.
It's good to see you, man. I feel like it's been an age since we've seen you, or at least on the podcast.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah, but we got to hang out a little bit earlier this year. I came and obviously stay with you and your wonderful family in Utah.
Yeah.
Where you live, I gotta say, Utah is probably one of my favorite places in the world so far that I've been to.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's quite a place.
It's beautiful. Like we went out to Zion, and obviously you guys took me out into the wild, to the national park.
Yeah.
Almost gave me a heart attack, making me climb up mountains on the easiest trail.
Right.
You guys like, you're right, mate. Like, oh, I think I'm dying, but I'm okay. It's beautiful.
Gotta get up those Loveland ramps a few more times.
Yeah. I'm glad we did it after the tournament. But yeah, I would very much love to come back and hang out with you guys there. You guys might have
I'll be headed out there next week. Sadly, no time for laser tag, but I'll still be thinking about you, Eves.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to St. George, or are you going to...
I'll be going through St. George, but not really in that area. We're going to be trekking up to Bryce Canyon, which I had intended to visit last time I was in Utah, but we weren't able to work out our spring break trip. So I have kicked it to the end of the school term, and now that's here. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing some Bryce Canyon next week.
Bryce is the one that was like further, if you keep going through Zion, right?
Yeah, you can go through Zion and then you have to go north a little ways.
It's even from here, it's maybe an hour. It's really close.
Right.
I think I'll probably even be driving through Cedar City as well.
You will. Yeah, you will for sure.
Should definitely stop by.
You can stop by and get a drink or something.
Maybe I will.
Stop by and get a popcorn for the road.
I've decided to represent the Cedar Fun Center today on the podcast. Got my fancy lanyard that you guys hooked me up with.
Yeah, oh yeah, I guess you can see that.
Yes, come get a popcorn and a lanyard.
I think isn't that your slogan? That's what's outside on the sign.
Something like that.
A lanyard could save your life in the desert. Don't ask me how, but it could.
Popcorn's just delicious. But yeah,
this is what you need. Something nice and salty to dry you out while you're out in the burning desert.
Right.
Is that an Appa plushie behind you? Chet has asked.
Oh yes, yeah, that's Appa. Yeah.
Or Appa. My bad. Is that okay? I'm going to show my ignorance here, but is that from Avatar?
Yeah.
Yeah, wicked, nailed it. Boom. Let's move on to something that I know a little bit more about. We play a Wii game called Space Marines. We've been playing for quite some time. You actually, I think you might be one of the only, I'll say players / sites that actually go as in depth as you go when it comes to teaching our game, though, right? Like you. Yeah.
probably accurate. I know.
think it
I
is.
mean, I've talked to Tragedy a little bit, but I don't know how in depth they actually go.
Well, so I was over in Brisbane a few weeks back, and one thing that they do that I hadn't seen before, I don't know if you guys do this or whatever, but we had our friend Truly Awful, aka Gray. He came along and played his first ever members night in Brisbane. And one thing that they did was that is Traj himself actually shadowed Gray his whole first game, and took him through and showed him angles and showed him where to get the bases and all that overwhelming stuff that newer players face. I thought that was a really cool thing. But you guys, I don't know if you guys do that, but you really dive deep into how you teach the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, essentially we just go for an extremely deep understanding of the game. We really look to, understand, the way that it is played and the way that we think it could be played, and, the positions and the way they interact, and I mean, we really try to go quite in depth.
And that's why they won the last tournament, folks.
And not just one, but like dominated. You guys were pretty dominant the whole week. It was.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I think so. But so we DK came up with this topic today, specifically talking about the way in which we approach the defensive side of Force, or sorry, of Space Marines. How do you want to approach this, DK? Do you want to go through the talking points, or
Yeah. So just a couple of like major topics related to defense. So I know I had sent you guys a little bit of a list, but I think in general, should we just talk about like how much do you think about defense, and is like defense as a concept in Space Marines 5, is it overrated, underrated, properly rated?
Well, so whenever I think it's interesting because my whole my first impressions of you specifically, Thunder, was Thunder plays heavy. Thunder's like one of the best defensive players there is, and whilst I think that's still accurate, after seeing you play, you're actually an offensive powerhouse. So like you're probably like one of the like best all rounders there could be, in my opinion. But yeah, like, so how I guess should we attack that first point? I think have you got your list there, DK?
I have it too.
Yeah, I had a slightly different list of my notes, so I apologize if I'm going in a different order or stuff like that. But yeah, just kind of the general defensive philosophies. But that kind of like occurred to me at a later point. I'm just like, yeah, are we right for focusing on defense as a topic? Like, is defense? Because I feel like certainly from a statistical perspective, especially the way the game has evolved and our statistical analysis and stuff like that, that there might be a tendency to kind of underrate defensive play, because that's not necessarily things that's going to get you MVP points or a high score, but there are moments when I think it can be pretty important to the team. So just in general, like how do you think about defense, like approaching the game in terms of like, do you want to come out super offensive? Do you think that having a defensive philosophy is good, or is defense just something that kind of happens that's a side point to having a good offensive strategy?
I think they're important. I'll say that you guys will probably have to stop me here and there throughout here, because I could be really long-winded on a lot of these explanations.
I'm so in for this.
The floor is yours.
Yeah. I feel like you could give me a topic and I can probably talk for hours and hours and hours without preparation. But on, I guess, to kind of piggyback off your note, like saying like you figured like I was this heavy player, and then you see me play scout, and even then, I mean, my first 6 or 7 tournaments I played commander every game.
Yep. I remember.
But when we especially start teaching players, what we tell them is we say, okay, let's say that we're going to focus for now on you learning heavy, for example. The way we want you to learn heavy is we want you to go into a game as commander, and we want you to pay attention to 4 points. What did my commander do in this game that helped me become successful as a player? What are things that my commander could have done that would have helped me be successful? What are things that the enemy commander did against me that worked? And what are things that the enemy commander could have done, the enemy commander could have done against me that would have been beneficial, or weaknesses that perhaps I had that he didn't take advantage of, or whatever.
That's the hard
one. I said the wrong ones. Sorry, if we're learning heavy, sorry, I meant your own. These things about your own heavy and these things about their heavy. I said commander a few times. So you're going to go in the game and as heavy, and you're going to kind of. I'm confusing all of you. I'm sorry. You're going to go in the game as commander, and you're going to observe these heavy players. You're going to observe your heavy. You're going to observe their heavy, and you're going to learn the way they play the game. And then you're going to go into another game, and you're going to play scout, and you do the same thing. Okay, how did my heavy play? How did their heavy play? Then you're going to go play an ammo game, and then you're going to go play a medic game, and then you're going to go play another commander game. And then not necessarily in this exact order, or you may play several commander games in a row. It doesn't matter. But you're going to observe the heavy on your team. You're going to observe the heavy on theirs. And then, after a handful of games, you're going to play a couple heavy games. You're going to kind of practice maybe implementing some of these things in your play, and you're going to say, okay, I think this works, and I think maybe this doesn't. And the reason this is important is you're learning the game as a team would play it, and not how an individual would play it. One of the things we see in really high competitive play is most players, most, if not almost all, cannot play more than one, maybe two positions at a high level. You see some crossover between like commanders and heavies, right? You may have a player who plays a lot of commander, and he can play heavy because they have a lot of similarities. Or you might see an ammo who can play a medic, or a medic who can play an ammo. But you don't see a lot of crossover, and this is because people don't truly understand the way the game is meant to be played. They understand it from the scope of one position. They have no idea what role their teammates are supposed to play. They have no idea how to help their teammates. They have no idea how their teammates can help them. And same thing with the enemy team. You may be a really excellent heavy player, but you need to understand how to play more than just heavy, because you're playing against more than just heavy. You're playing against a commander, and you're playing against a scout, and you're playing against a resupply, and you have to understand the strengths and weaknesses of those classes in order to perform well.
Yeah, what should they do, and what are they actually doing, and are those two out of alignment?
Yeah, and so what we try to teach is like the game is this very large puzzle, and you're trying to figure out where your piece fits. And until you have all of the pieces and all the pieces around your piece, you are just walking around guessing the whole time. You really don't know. So, like when we think of defense, I think it's important. I think it's relevant. But I also think that, one thing that we try to stress to our players is, we're trying to get out of the way the idea of the way it's currently played is like, okay. And I have a really good memory. A long time ago, you guys did a series of podcasts, one about each position, and you brought on some people to talk about those positions. And so when you did the heavy podcast, you had Baden on, and one of the things Baden said, which I actually really liked, I didn't agree with a lot of stuff he said, or I didn't agree with all of it, but I did agree with this. I thought this was a really good line. But he said, if you are a player who really enjoys playing offense, heavy isn't for you. And if you're a player that really enjoys playing defense, heavy isn't for you. And that you kind of have to learn to do what's required of you. And I think that's extremely accurate for heavy, but I think that's accurate for everybody. I think if you were to poll a bunch of players, I think nearly everybody would tell you that the defense is the ammo and the medic and the heavy, and the offense is the commander and the 2 scouts. And although in the game we see that most of the time,
that's like the meta, as
for sure.
Explain to people, like that's kind of how it's evolved. But there's nothing that says it has to be that way, right?
Well, right, and I don't really think that's wrong. I mean, I think that the way the meta, the way the game is played now, I mean, I don't think it's wrong per se, but what we kind of try to break that mold, and we say, okay, what does the team need, or right? What you're more than just your position. You are learning everything, and you're learning the game, and you're learning how all these pieces fit together. So, like, what does the team require? Does the team require both scouts playing defense sometimes? Absolutely. Does the team require a commander playing defense? I guess sometime. Whatever we're going to define defense as, certainly.
Well, let's try to do that. Let's try to define like defense. So, at least in my mind, the only thing that's relevant for defense in Space Marines 5, because we don't really defend bases or anything like that, but it's primarily defending your medic and, to a lesser extent, your ammo, so you can continue to get resupplied, so you have the opportunity to do more things, whether that's defense or field control or anything, or offense, attacking the other team's resupply, anything else in the game. You need to have your own resupply in the game, so to some extent you have to defend them as kind of your defensive objective. I mean, in general, I guess we would agree with that.
Yeah, I would say defending the resupply, defending the medic, for more than one purpose. Obviously, we have the reason of preventing your medic from losing lives, and then along the same lines, allowing your teammates to be able to resupply.
We made a distinction when we ran the triple threat tournament. We had our teams of 3, and one of the stipulations was a team of 3 would play the offensive roles, and the other 3 teams, we didn't refer to it as the defense, because it's not really defense. We referred to it as like the back line. So rather than I think there's an important distinction to make too, because a lot of people get in their heads, if you're a heavy, then your job is to stay back with the resupply. That's what you do during the game, and that's not accurate. It's one of the things that a heavy does.
And like I said, I'm gonna try to keep these answers somewhat short, because we could be here for a long time.
Poetic for as long as you want.
And I think when I teach players, and when we teach players, the thing that we make sure that we try to define to them is, who are we teaching and what are the circumstances? And because the reality of the game is extremely complex, and there are different levels of player skill, and there are different, parts in the game that require all these different things. So for example, when we get a brand new player come in, we're going to tell him, we're going to put him in a scout, and we're going to say, okay, listen, when you get 10 lives, go back and get more. Right? Are we playing that way? Of course we're not playing that way. That's insane. Am I looking at the back of my gun and going, oh, I'm at 11, I'm good, and then I go, oh, it's 10, it's time to go back. Heavens no. But we can't explain. A new player doesn't have the mental capacity for us to throw all 6,000 variables at him and be like, okay, based on this and 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 this, you add this and subtract this and blah 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 blah. This is how many lives you come back with. They don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So, I don't even think, for a heavy, that's bad instruction for a new player. Yeah, okay, sit here and, stay full on resupply and shoot the commander when he comes in, certainly. And that was one of the things, I want to talk about, is like when we talk about defense, or we talk about, a certain play style for a certain position, or whatever it is, we have to define who are we teaching, what knowledge do they have.
And also, the way an add-on to that is like where you're playing as well, because
yes, for sure,
the maze will kind of dictate some of that too. But maybe for all intents and purposes, we talk about, localized play rather than, yeah.
And one of the things
I guess.
Oh,
go ahead, Ease.
Oh, I was gonna say one thing we do, we tell our players is, I say, okay, when I'm teaching you, everything I tell you, when we're talking about a game, is based on two evenly matched teams playing each other, right? Because this is another one of those scenarios where you're going to play differently if you're better skilled than the other team, or if you are lower skilled than the other team. So I say, okay, assume this is two very, very closely matched teams in skill, and this is how we're going to play, all these scenarios, unless we say something else. Because it's kind of important to define that, because it's it's another one of those things where they say, oh well, you said I shouldn't drop below this many lives, and therefore last game you were sitting at 5, and I said, well yeah, but we're also winning by 40,000 points, so this is different. This is not a closely matched game.
Yeah, I'm not you.
Do what I say, sucker, not what I do. Yeah, right on.
I mean, I would say that generally kind of follows in the back in the day when we actually had a site and was trying to train newer players, and we would strive for things like evenly balanced teams on a member night, so people could kind of see the different quirks of the games and things like that. I would sometimes try to outline to people what I would just call like the basic rotation strategy, which is kind of a switch focal point between defense and offense, which is, right, if your commander's out attacking, the heavy is kind of breaking your resupply, but when the commander comes back, if the heavy is able to then move forward, so you kind of keep changing the focal point between the heavy and the commander as being the focal point of the offense. So you always have a 3-hit who's able to attack and a 3-hit who's back. Now, obviously, there are a ton of situations that's not going to work. That's why I would call it like a basic rotation type thing. But being able to kind of pivot between offense and defense, of having a 3-hit back and a 3-hit forward, is like one kind of beginning point of understanding how the flow of the game works.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's, I think it's good. I think once again, that's something we would teach a new player, is that, hey, like, we don't need everybody to stand in the same spot, and here's an example of that, and, and whatnot. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And
yeah, and I mean, even like, what's very, very frustrating, and anytime I talk to you, it really highlights how much more, not necessarily myself, but like our site could be doing to improve the gameplay of our player base in general. But because rather than just going and playing the game and then the game's over and you move on to the next game, really like actively thinking about how you can play each of these roles better, or what happened in the last game and how you can adjust that or learn from it. Because one thing, when Auckland was at its height, we had a very good rotation strategy. So we would always have the 3 hits kind of rolling, but also the scouts rolling as well. So there was never more than the heavy and one other back getting resupplied, or 3 hit and a scout back getting resupplied. Because whilst it is intense to have 3 people out attacking, it's really detrimental on the team to have 5 people back in the resupply.
Right.
Because that's just, there's too many people. It's chaos and confusion.
Yeah.
And I suppose that can kind of fall under what not to do, potentially in a defensive situation, is having too many people defending.
Right.
Yeah.
But are they defending though, or are they saying, "I need you to give me stuff now"? That's not defending.
That's true. I guess maybe that's an important distinction then.
Just because you're next to the resupply does not mean you're defending. I've tried to explain this distinction to people a number of times. I was back in defense. No, you weren't.
It's a difficult question to to answer. Obviously, we typically say, if you're scout and you're within 20 feet of the resupply, you're not on defense. Like you get in, you get your resupplies, and you leave. You do not get shot. You are not on defense. You are getting resupplied. I think it comes down to another concept. One of the very large topics that we teach is to understanding how to take control over as many aspects of the game as you can. One of those is resupply. So what we say, what we try to tell players, and I think this is somewhat realistic in our context of an evenly matched game, right? If you're getting smashed, then this may not apply. This may be difficult, to actually pull off. What we tell people is you should never be in a position where you need resupply, because as soon as you need resupply, you are no longer in control of your own game. Someone else is in control of your game. Your resupplies may not be in a position to get you resupplied. The other team may be, in a position to prevent you from getting resupply. You are giving up your control to somebody else. And so your goal is control every aspect of the game that you possibly can, including the ability to, you always want to be in a position where you want to resupply. Resupply would be really great in this situation, but you don't need resupply right here, right? When you go back and there's 5 people there, you don't need it. You want it, you don't need it, you can wait. And that's a mistake that we see a lot, is that, I still remember there was a tournament we went to in one of the practice days, and I was playing resupply, I was playing medic, and we're just getting pounded, and we're in a cubby, and we're both dead, and our heavy walks around the corner and goes, "I need lives right now," and his lights are off and our lights are off, and then he gets shot and dies out of the game. He was on 1 life, and he came back for resupply, and then he goes out and starts saying that, Thunder's the worst medic I've ever seen. He didn't even give me lives. I'm like, what are you talking? What in the world do you want me to do?
Can't fight the facts.
And so essentially is that sometimes there's going to be a lot of people going back for resupply at one time, and most of that is a failure to understand, I think, the flow of the game and the bigger picture, and then also the needs of your teammates.
That's the key. That right there.
Yeah.
So like a lot of this I think separates great players from good players and terrible players. But the great players understand not only what they're doing, but what the rest of their team are doing.
Right.
And yeah, if you're in a situation where you're not aware enough to understand that, like, okay, well, I'll take 1 hit of lives and I'll go back out and put some pressure on the other team because my teammate needs it more than I do. That sort of stuff really elevates your game once you can kind of understand that stuff. But play outside of just yourself.
Yeah, and that's one of the main themes. Like we talk about. You're going to. We're going to teach our players to learn the big picture of the game, learn about all the classes, learn how they interact, learn what their strengths and weaknesses are. And that's a big problem. Is exactly. People don't know. They don't have a clue what's going on with the rest of their teammates, and they don't understand why. They have no idea. And we see it's just amazing how much we see. Someone who's played just 1,000 commander games and nothing else, and they don't have a clue how to work as a team or how anything fits in with anything else. And
we got a good question from chat.
I'll let you handle this, DK. Do you want to read out the question?
Yeah, so Lucy asks, Thunder, Steve, DK, I have a question. We'll be playing a Space Marines tournament next Sunday. 6 people per team, 2 scouts, okay, so standard arrangement. 4 minutes, everyone must play every role. So it's a good idea, especially for your first tournament. Get people moving in and out. Any tips for a team who's not played Space Marines at all? I said every time that I want to play them. Just do it. just come up with an arrangement and get people filing through the positions. play all of them as much as possible and do the kinds of things that Thunder said. Pay attention not just to what's happening in the game for you, but like what did your teammates do that helped out the team as a whole and then helped you individually, and what did people on the other team do that made your life miserable or made the game easier for you, and weaknesses you could exploit.
Yeah, I definitely think it's hard. I mean, I think to a certain, in the beginning, at least when you're that new, there's so little instruction that is going to be beneficial. Like there's to an extent, you just have to play a block of games to really kind of even feel oriented with what is going on. I mean,
and it's going to be a trial and error process, because like when we first started playing Space Marines at our site, we didn't have anybody who knew what they were doing. We had to build that from the ground up. Like when we first started playing, I don't think we knew and didn't discover until probably a couple of weeks in that you could resupply somebody with both shots and lives at the same time. And then all of a sudden that was like, wow, what a revelation. So yeah, focus on things like that, like double resupplies first. Like knowing how to do that is already going to increase your efficiency by 100% right there.
Yeah, that's true.
One thing that really frustrated me, we were watching the Aussie titles last year or the year before. And one thing that was incredibly frustrating. Now, the guys over in Western Australia, they play a thing called Aussie titles every year. And it's kind of an Armageddon format, but with just Force games, I suppose, now that they've made the transition away from Zone. Well done, you guys. But they play a variety of games, and they've just started, well, not just started, but they play a little bit of Space Marines. And one thing I noticed was that nobody, like, a lot of the times their heavies stayed on like 9 lives for ages. They wouldn't.
And their ammos.
Oh, and the ammos.
That's what I remember us commenting.
That's right. It was the ammos.
Yeah.
Ammos wouldn't take any lives.
You're right there. You're next to the medic. Why are you not getting lives?
If you've got lulls, just make sure that the ammo stays reasonably full. It's really bad, obviously, when your ammo dies out.
Well, I mean, let's start here. Since we're answering a question about how to get started with Space Marines, and since defense does revolve around the resupply in some way, shape, or form, like one of the first things that we always look for when we go to a new arena is, all right, well, where are the resupply spots? So that was one thing I put in our little chat is, all right, when we go to a new field, what do we look for in a good resupply spot? I mean, sometimes we cheat and just ask the experienced players outside, hey, where do you guys resupply? But if you're going to a new field for the first time, you're looking for, hey, where's a good spot to resupply? What kinds of features on the terrain or in the field do you guys look for?
And I'd go one step further and say whose input on the team in terms of, like, if you guys have set positions that you play, whose kind of input bears a little more weight? That's probably a leading question, but
well, I mean, that's important, but I'm literally asking, like you two guys, when you go to a new field, like what are things that you would look for in a good resupply spot?
Well, you kick off first, Thunder, if you want. Unless you want to.
Okay, well, I would say, yeah, I mean, pretty much you're looking for a space that your medic can. It's really hard to get to your medic. Ways there may only be one way into your medic or 2 ways into your medic, the least number of that possible. But also I'm looking for somewhere where my resupplies can still be participants in the game. When we approach really anything, and obviously resupplying is included in anything, we look at, okay, we ask all the W questions. Where do we get resupplied? Where do we stand? Why do we get resupplied? When do we get resupplied? All these questions, and one of those is where? Where do you get resupplied at? Well, the answer is often if you want to be able to receive resupply as far away from your resupplies as you can. Mm-hmm. You often don't want unless you have to be. You do not want to be anywhere near your resupply.
Yeah. If you can get it halfway across the field, then it's amazing. Nothing makes me feel better as a resupply than resupplying somebody who's like way far away, and we're just like, hey, give them a double, and they're all the way over there, and it's like they can just go straight back in and attack their team. Oh, it's amazing. I love that.
And the question is, I mean, the question really becomes like, how far can you resupply someone effectively? I mean, sure, you're going to hit doubles from halfway across the arena every once in a while, but can you actually reliably make resupplies from that far away? Maybe not. But at least, you get 10 feet away or 15 feet away or 20 feet away, or, in the case of, Loveland, where we just were, I mean, your resupplies in, one corner of the third floor, and you're getting resupplied in the other corner, and, you're not really being attacked. So you can pretty reliably take, resupply from that far away. So, I'm definitely looking for, a place that's defensible, a place that's hopefully backed up into a corner, but also a place where they, the resupplies can still be participants in the game.
Yeah, when I think about like what counts as a medic cubby, one thing that I would look for is what I would call a short corner, where essentially it's like you just have a small area where you have to take a very sharp corner to get around to target the medic, because that means that a person's going to have to take a long straightaway where they can get shot. They're going to have to change direction and then look again before they actually get into the medic. So that provides them as many obstacles as possible to take a shot at the medic, and as many barriers that they can be shot from by your team. So a whole gauntlet they have to run to get into your medic. So that's what I mean by like a short corner. So that little cubby that you guys have on the yellow platform, and then the area in the corner at blue where you guys have, are two really good examples of that, because you essentially have to go all the way in, you have to take a corner, and you have to turn around and go in another direction.
Yeah.
If at all possible as well, like somewhere where you can not only the person getting resupply far away from the resupply, but you can kind of split the resupply up a little. Somewhere where they're not, standing side by side. Side by side is a difficult one. It's probably the default for a lot of like newer resupplies, but as you maybe get a resupply partnership with somebody, because there have been some very good, I mean, Russ and Tom spring to mind as like good resupply pairings that have played lots of games together. They can stand, 20 feet apart from each other and still hit resupplies. So that's probably a good thing to look at as well. But maybe not 100% necessary. If you're covered by a good heavy, maybe.
I think Thunder raises a good point too, is that you also want to have visibility. Like sometimes those short corners are really great for keeping you out of the action, but if you're all the way out of the action, it means you can't help your team by calling things out, by taking shots, by aiding in the defense directly. So I guess that's kind of the transition question, is like, how much of a role do the resupply themselves play in the defense rather than just being the ones who are being defended, because they can shoot people too, right?
Yeah, one of the ways that we teach resupply is, we'll go with I'll go with it. We'll put up our arena map, and I'll use my dry erase marker, and we'll put up we'll put up an ammo, or we'll put up a medic, like in the back corner. And I realize probably a number of people watching the podcast will never have played an arena, but they're in like the very back corner of blue base.
Figure it out.
And the very back corner of blue base is very safe, but you have no idea what's going on anything other than like 5 feet from you. I mean, you have no visibility, you have no idea what's going on. So I'm going to tell you, so you're playing medic, you're in the cubby here, and maybe the enemy heavy runs into your base and a nuke drops, and all that's obvious to you is you have to leave the base. I said, do you go to red base, which is the base in the corner off to your left, or do you go to green base, which is the base off in the corner to your right? And I get all kinds of questions. Oh, I go to red base, or I would go to green base, or whatever. And I say, here's the problem.
Dependent.
This is a trick question. You have no idea what's going on, right? I mean, one thing I talked about earlier is we talk about controlling everything in your power. We talk about gaining control over things that a lot of people think you don't even have control over. And in order to make, controlled, informed decisions, you have to have information, right? If you're in the very back corner of blue base, and this is one of the things that like teams really struggle when they come to our arena, is they put their resupplies in that very, very back corner of blue base, and it's terrible. Teams, I mean, when we host arenas, I mean, blue side never wins because the resupplies are always standing in the wrong spot. But you have no idea what is going on in the game. You have no idea where anyone is. You have no idea anything that's happening. I mean, you're hearing a couple callouts here and there, and things are changing. And so when that, with that heavy in this example, he comes into your base and you have to leave, you're about to guess. And some of the times you're going to guess right, and some of the times you're going to guess wrong. But you're not, you're not a high tier player. You're not going to win all your games by guessing. And so the farther you can make it out of your base while still being safe, and the more information that you can gather, the better you can make informed decisions about your gameplay and your teammates and things that you should be doing. And so you do need to find a place that you have access to the game and access to information.
Remember, kids, it was the code crackers and the intelligence services that won the world wars, not just your fighting grunts.
Exactly. I think that was a really sobering realization during this recent tournament in Loveland, because I don't play Resupply a lot. I don't play Resupply a lot. I've never played actually Resupply in a tournament from memory. I could be wrong, but yeah.
Other than the one that we just played, you mean?
Aside from that one, yeah. Well, that's the one I mean prior to that tournament.
Yeah.
And so my understanding of how to play that role well is actually way worse than I had realized, because I would my default, and part of this comes down to our team dynamic as well, was go sit in the corner, go sit in the box and like don't come out. And you're right. Like what happens is somebody comes in and flushes the resupply, then you're down to a guessing game as to where you're going. And a lot of the times I was guessing wrong, and that just it creates it just created a lot of chaos. During our games. And then contrast that with watching you guys play. You guys would play forward a lot. Like the resupply would be not cramped in a cubbyhole, but the cubbyhole was there to track back into should you need it. It was very sobering. Some self-reflection going on there.
I think that's oftentimes what I would tell like resupply players once you've crossed that beginning threshold and you have kind of the basics down. It's if I don't need to be all the way back, how far forward should I be? And my answer is always as far forward as possible, but no farther.
Not like,
like that's a perfectly cogent answer, right?
Yeah, that's real helpful. Thanks, DK.
Very specific.
One quick aside, or just as a side point, Lucy, what I would also suggest, and it can be a little overwhelming, check out our YouTube, check out some of the first person capture videos that are on the Auckland Laser Force page. Maybe go back and have a listen to some of the previous position podcasts that we talked about. Although Thunder would say don't do that because the information is wrong. No. That's what you said, right? No.
Pretty much.
And even though it's not our channel, you can also check out Laser Mischief.
Yeah.
And his webpage. So there's just some first-person videos on there as well. I'm pulling up the channel.
Oh, thank you. There's a thing, exclamation mischief. That's not how you spell mischief. Mischief. There we go. Check out his.
Oh, all right. Well, hey, isn't that handy?
Also, the last one is the tournaments page, because there are some stuff on there as well. And I think on the Loveland page as well. There were some. I think like a long time ago they did some breakdown videos of kind of the real basic features of each of the 5 classes. For new players, it's probably a good place to go and check out as well. I thoroughly enjoyed those videos. So, but there are a lot of resources, and then also, feel free to reach out to some of the more experienced players in the scene. I'm not the best teacher, so maybe not me. But like these two guys, very, very good teachers. But yeah, anyway, I thought I would do some plugs there as well. Right, where were we at?
Thanks.
I've ruined the flow. Sorry.
No, I think the flow's been good because we've kind of just been moving from a lot of the topics that I had on the outline anyway. And I think Thunder makes a great point about you need to have information to run defense effectively, and that means you can't just be hiding blind in a corner because then you're reduced to a guessing game. So the other thing is that if you're hiding in a corner, it doesn't allow you to make one of the cardinal defensive moves that we have as a result of just the way we play. And what's not even a loophole in the rules, it just is the way the rule works, which is utilizing a backtrack to prevent yourself from being chased. Because if you're already in the corner, you have nowhere to backtrack, right? So how would you say is best to utilize backtracks effectively?
Yeah, and then this is another. This is along the lines of controlling what we can control. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to do something like take plays or take whatever that gives us the highest odds of coming out successful. So if you are a heavier in ammo and you're about to trade shots with someone who's walking at you, there is a chance that they will hit you and you will miss them. And part of this is a problem with the actual hardware. It's not perfect.
What?
And so you are going to miss shots that you probably should have hit because the system we play on isn't perfect. And that's fine. That's a part of the game, but we have to learn to adapt. So this comes down to, once again, controlling what we can control. You may have times where you go to hit a player and you miss through maybe no fault of your own. However, a backtrack is 100%, right? When you backtrack, they can't come in and shoot you. You can't lose. Whereas taking a shot, you can. So when you move forward enough to give yourself the opportunity to backtrack, you are giving yourself a guaranteed 100% form of defense where not even shooting someone can provide you.
Yeah, assuming they can't take a shot on you when you backtrack.
Yeah.
That's very accurate, DK. Very accurate.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's RNG's this.
So I suppose this particular thing, and we talk from the perspective of playing under the international rule set. Obviously, this stuff is going to be different. Say in the UK or pretty soon the Czech Republic, where the rule set is different. But assuming that we're playing Space Marines under the international rule set, then absolutely backtracking is such a vital weapon, and it's something that you have to get in the habit of doing. It needs to be good playing habits, because I can tell you right now, Auckland do not backtrack at the moment, because we haven't had A, regular members nights in quite some time, but B, high competitive tournament style training or play.
Need somebody in that ass.
Exactly.
That.
Well, as I saw an eloquent lecture from a gentleman explain about how to effectively push the resupply areas, is that you don't want to push them into a corner, you want to push them out of the corner.
That's such a good way to put it, man.
Something like that.
So eloquent.
You try to. I mean, again, I think this is basically true of any kind of strategy game. Is like whatever the enemy doesn't want to do, whatever position they don't want to be in, try to put them in that position. Get them in between. Is like I think you said in your video. Get them in between your team members, so that way they have to look in different directions, and they don't have that kind of safe spot where they can be.
Yeah, that's what we basically classify this under the umbrella of what we call arena control. And so when we talk about arena control, obviously we can get pretty in depth into this concept. But one thing I try to do is when I was in training to become a flight instructor, we have to go through a lot of education training as well as like actual flight training. Hey, one of the things they talked about is like the more understanding you have about a particular topic, the easier you can explain it, right? When you get enough understanding about a particular topic, you can explain anything simply in one sentence. Just the most basic concept of it. And so when we talk about arena control, our one sentence that the underlying, okay, here is what arena control is. In one sentence, it is putting the enemy team in between your team. So this is where the complication comes in for resupplies moving up and out of the box or whatever this ends up being, is you are now leaving your back exposed and allowing the enemy team to potentially take arena control from you for very little if nothing. I mean, you should just walk back there. One of the things that we really don't have time to get into is we teach our players that different examples and different ways of understanding that you can be unbelievably effective in so many different scenarios without ever firing a shot. All you have to do is move to the correct spot at the correct time. It is amazing the amount of influence that you can have on the game while by walking to a particular spot at the right time with your lights off and never firing a shot. You can be unbelievably effective and change the course of the game by simply knowing where to go. And this is kind of the fight of, okay, your resupply, sure, they want to move up and they want to be effective and they want to be participants of the game and they want to be able to gain information, do all these things, but you potentially leave your back exposed to someone simply just walking behind you and taking arena control from you. And that's kind of the give and take and the subtlety behind that.
Well, I think players should be intuitively aware of that, because which of us hasn't played a game where there is some player who's posted up in some place? I don't care. Take your pick of whatever arena you're in. If you're in St. George, they're on the red platform. If you're in Brisbane, they're in Helm. If you're in Loveland, they're on one of the like the big box or something like that. But some area that's really key. And she's like, oh man, this guy's been there the whole game. It's just so frustrating. Can't move past him. Can't do anything. It's like just by being there, that has a huge influence on the game. And that's the kind of situation I think that you alluded to, where watch what the other team's doing. The things that annoy you when you're trying to play against that team, it's like, maybe I should do those kinds of things when I'm playing against another team as well. Because if I find that frustrating to play against, probably other people would be also.
Yeah, and this is I think part of my issue with the MVP system. The MVP system, okay, it's not my favorite. I don't like to complain about it because I'm kind of the person who, like, I feel bad complaining about something without offering a solution, and I'm not offering solutions. So on the record, I'm not complaining about the MVP system. But, going into Loveland, one of the things that we talked about as a team, I said, it is highly likely that Snuffles will come out with significantly more MVP than me. It's not necessarily because he's, being more effective or whatever it is, but, like, I understand, things about going to the correct position with my lights off and not shooting anyone and being the deciding factor in the game than he does, right? I'm going to come to those conclusions faster, whereas, and I'm going to see those things before he does, and that's just going to happen. And, I will probably score lower and I'll probably get lower MVP, but I'm having a greater, or a different influence on the game. And those influences aren't really reflected in MVP, unfortunately, but oh well.
Yeah. I think that's unfortunately true of a lot of even advanced analytics in a number of different sports. I mean, like with NBA playoffs going on right now, we know that there are guys who have a huge impact on the game that might not show up in the box score, but it's like, oh yeah, even just their energy or fighting for rebounds, doing all kinds of things that aren't just did you put the ball in the basket are really important for the flow of the game. Not how many points you scored, how many times you shot the medic or things like that. that aren't as easily quantifiable, but we know they make a big difference. And I think that at least the better players are good at recognizing that. I think when it comes to like voted positions and things like that, that good players will be able to make those kinds of calls and say, okay, well, I know who is really effective at this position, even if maybe they weren't at the absolute top of the MVP leaderboard, which is, I think, why sometimes there's a disparity between who won the MVP stats
Right.
and who were the voted positions.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah,
some
I
of that is
agree.
also just interpersonal stuff. You never know, but
Or popularity
sometimes
contest.
that's what happens. Yeah, but sometimes that's what happens.
Yeah.
But like you would hope that those things are then reflected in how your team does as a whole in
For sure.
competition, right? Which really that's the thing that matters most for me anyway. Is how did your team do? What position did your team come in the tournament? How or maybe not even that. How did your team look over the week? Because you can get to finals and be undone by a moment of terribleness on your part or a moment of brilliance on the other team's part, and these things happen. But like, how did your team perform over the week? And maybe that's more of an introspective thing, rather than other people telling you how your team did over the week. a lot of people will have a good gauge of how they felt over the week. Usually.
And one other thing that I would put in for the whole concept of field control, I think Eves has the perfect one sentence illustration of that is put the other team in between members of your team, because that's always what you're trying to do. You're trying to get them in the open. I also think of something I would refer to as like the triangle principle, is that most arenas, or at least sections of arenas in one way, shape, or form, are a box or a square of sorts. So it's like, if it has four sides, if you control three of like the corners or three of like those key areas, that's essentially field control, because you've forced them into one corner or one section and you control the other three. So you have a 3-1 advantage against them. Like, I think about this a lot. Even though they play very differently, I think about this a lot for both Detroit and St. George. St. George plays very fast. Detroit plays much more grindy. But in both cases, it's like in St. George, if you have control of wherever you're resupplying, whether that's blue or yellow, and the green platform and the red platform, you're in great shape, because there's pretty much no angle that any enemy can approach where they're not going to have to worry about being shot from at least two different directions. And in Detroit, like, if you have control of your ramp, the back corner, and that central tower, like, there you go. That's what you have to, in order to move forward and get that kind of movement, you have to have control of like those three key areas. And if you don't have control of them, you're trying to get control of them. Like, you're never going to have 100% control of them all the time, but it's like, if we're talking about what field control is, I feel like that's a good way of illustrating it.
I think it's interesting because Auckland kind of works in the opposite way. Like, if you control the upstairs floor, then generally you're going to win the game. But that's a small portion of the maze compared to the rest of the downstairs. I suppose the points would be, if you control the ramps, then you control upstairs, and therefore you've got more control over the game. But for us, it really clicked when we went to, or at least it clicked for me when we went to Brisbane in 2018. To have Beast took me aside, and like, Beast is one of the best heavies that have ever played our game. He took me aside. He was like, "Hey, look, I really like how you're playing the game, but if you stand, if you shift this way 2 meters and see that line there, if you control that line, then it shuts down this whole section of the maze." And I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't even see that before." So for us, like, maze of control, like zone of control was such a maybe it's foreign concept because we hadn't approached looking at our arena in that particular way. But it definitely made sense in Brisbane and made a huge difference to my game. Just being able to control those different zones, and then I think our scouts had also gotten some of those kind of points as well. Like controlling the helm and controlling the bridge and controlling the vortex and all that sort of stuff. So,
King.
huh?
Stupid king.
It was such a different way for them to play. Like King found himself getting very frustrated at an older player of ours called Mookie, because Mookie had this good sense of being able to change his play style or change the way he played in our arena depending on who he was playing against, and it was really frustrating for a lot of players because they weren't able to make the adjustment, and he was. Like, you know, our philosophy has always been go and kill the resupply. Just go kill the resupply. That's your job. Go kill the resupply. Where somewhere like Brisbane,
in general, not terrible advice.
Yeah, but like you know, there really wasn't any steps in the middle of that. It's just, hey, go and attack the resupply and kill them out of the game. In a lot of other mazes, it's, hey, go and control these sections of the maze, and killing the resupply will come as a result of that. So, you know, it's hard for some players to switch out of those different mindsets and play more of a defensive zone, well, not even defensive, but play more of a zone control rather than a battering ram, a fast battering ram. I thought it was an interesting observation. Right. What else was on that list?
Well, I'm sure this topic will be near and dear to your heart, Steve. Let's talk about the totem pole, the ultimate kind of full defensive maneuver that, as we learned, was actually mostly devised by Rusty as an answer to your very annoying tendency of you and Virus to beat on the Brisbane team in 2006, and trying to figure out some way to control for that was to set up the so-called totem pole, where you would have both scouts and the ammo essentially form a kind of vertical line, have the medic just kind of tucked around the corner, so that way anytime they come across into this one area, you're having 3 shots come directly at you. And yeah, I mean, Al makes a point.
You sound like
annoying,
no. You sound like a baby. Get out of here with that bullshit comment. Mothing team. Oh, get out of here.
What's mothing? Mothing?
People who just hang around and pick off the scouts and like
okay, yeah.
and like don't actually go and hit the reset. Oh, you crybaby. I love you, Al.
It can be very frustrating to play against, where you just have, this angle of attack, and it's sometimes referred to as the totem pole. Other times it's the box, because sometimes you can have 4 players arranged in a box and all shooting down one hallway where there's only one area of attack. But this can be, in moments, an effective defensive strategy. So one, I kind of explained the principle behind it, but how do you beat the totem pole? Because I would like everybody to be aware of this, because I would like to discourage the totem pole as much as possible.
Indeed. I think we all want
how
that.
to defeat this. Yeah. So let's hear you guys' input on how do you beat the totem pole.
I hate to jump ahead of you, Thunder, because I've thought about this for the better part of a decade.
Many sleepless nights.
Longer than that, actually. 2006. So going on.
Yeah, a decade and a half, really.
Yeah. For a very long time. And like this kind of comes down back to back to. No. You can't. That's the thing. We took away the ability of the totem pole. The reason why it happened is because there was a section of our maze that had a wall it was basically like a really long dead end area. So our maze actually has removable doors. So at the end of this dead end, there's a door that hasn't been put in there since 2006, because the stupid totem pole. But the reason the strategy worked when it worked was because we were very, very slow. A, we had never seen it before. And B, we were very slow to react to how to actually beat it. And the way you beat that is you take it. You don't even approach. For us, you don't approach the totem pole. So what would happen is either the commander would come around and get hit, or a scout would come around and get hit, and they would lose, 1 to 3 lives depending on who it was immediately, because they didn't need a 3-hit bank, they sent their 2 3-hits out to attack me. I was the heavy at the time, and then our resupply. And so they were able to pincer us effectively, and I can't defend against Rusty and Traj playing, commander and heavy. There's
you can.
yeah, no one's gonna beat that. So the way in this particular instance that it could have been dealt with is, the attacking trio needs to pivot and focus their attention on one of those 2 3 hits, because if you can if you can remove one of those 3 hits, then the heavy has less to focus on. They can focus all their attention on taking out the other 3 hit and removing them as a factor. And if you have 4 out of your 6 players not doing anything in a game, that's a lot of wasted points or wasted opportunity. So it's again about control, like DK and Thunder were talking about earlier. 100% now, exactly right.
Because the totem pole relies on not field control, but control of one very narrow space.
Yeah,
it's a single angle of attack, because that's the only way you can run it. Is there has to be only one way in.
Yeah.
I would have probably given the exact same answer. Yeah, I think he's spot on with that. I would say, yeah. I mean, when I actually read the totem pole thing, I don't think that I've seen like 2 scouts and an ammo do it, or 2 scouts and an ammo and a medic do it. I've seen all 6 players do it a few times.
Yeah, that's the full on box.
Yeah,
and that I think in some ways is actually easier to defeat, because that really does rely on all of them being forced into a corner, which is never going to turn out well. The only reason that it worked in 2006, like Steve said, is that they had both of their 3 hits now free to attack, and when you have Rusty and Tragedy unshackled and just out in the field wreaking havoc, it's difficult to deal with.
Yeah. But I would say the same thing. I mean, even you said like having the commander and scouts kind of turn around and deal with one of the 3 hits. I would say deal with both. I mean, at least if you can get in a position where you can potentially shoot both of them. But yeah, I mean, a 2 versus 6. Yeah, I like that answer.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, in that particular instance, like they were attacking into upstairs, which is kind of the position of strength in our arena, and it has multiple ways in which is fine if you can control one side, but as soon as you have to split and take care of 360 degrees, it just doesn't work. They were actually rotating the 3 hits through the totem as they were returning to be resupplied. They did a lot of damage early, and I suppose it's hard because I didn't get to see. I didn't see it from the other side. I didn't see the actual totem because I was too busy getting my ass kicked. But if they can take away most of that attacking trio's lives, that again will force the team to kind of go. Everyone's back at the resupply, and when that happens, it's never good. You're in the riffing spot. Oh, you would have the best for you. I hate the totem. It's just again it just really highlights the effectiveness of if you're able to pivot or like adapt to things whilst you're in the arena. I suppose like looking at it like you control the things you can control, then that's what makes you a really great Space Marines player.
And Al says that the totem has a similar effectiveness of a full turtle. I mean, really, it's just a variation on that same thing, but it's a incredibly like your entire strategy is oriented around defense and trying to take advantage of the other team running what I would call an ineffective offense. Like something that's effective against a team that is scattered and disorganized is not going to be effective against a team that has a defensive mindset where they're always going to be able to focus 100% of their fire and of their control and their energy on you as a single attacker, well, yeah, you're going to need to work a little bit more as a team. You can't just, file people one at a time into the alien death cannons and clog them with wreckage. It just doesn't work that way.
What a reference. Yeah. Stupid totem pole. Stupid totem pole.
Okay, so our lessons are: you have to control the field. You can't do an isolated attack, because the totem pole and strategies like that, they work against players who are used to being a one-person wrecking crew. I'm going to go in, I'm going to attack the resupply position, and I can just force them out by myself. Well, yeah, under normal circumstances where they're distracted and they're looking in a different direction and they're concentrating on 4 different things at once, that might be true.
Or if it's one-on-one.
But if they know exactly what you're going to do and every time you're going to do it, and they have this one counter for you, you better come with another plan. So you're going to need to bring more than one attacker if you're going to break the totem pole, or it's like you just soak up whatever the enemy team is doing. You control the field. You wait until your commander has a nuke. You make sure your team's in position, and then you bust them right out of there. Because if you plant your heavy right in their resupply in that one little corner where they're running the totem pole, and that nuke goes off, they're going to have to reestablish someplace else. And then you've got them, as Linder said, right where you want them, right in between your team. Because the nuke can disrupt any kind of defense, really. It's like you have to wait till you have that nuke, and everybody has to know what they're doing. But that requires a full team effort. So that's the thing. A totem pole relies on teamwork. How do you beat good teamwork? You have to have better teamwork.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to, similarly, to what we talked about earlier, where, okay, you may be able to play commander at a high level, or you may be able to play scout at a high level, but you probably can't play anything else. Like, most of this comes down to just, really one-dimensional play, people that really are not sure why they're doing what they're doing. They're just kind of in the motions. And I think that's definitely the most common is we see players kind of like that. And I think part of the reason that totem pole is effective is because we have so many players who are so, one-dimensional in their gameplay, and as soon as the enemy team does something different, they don't know how to react. And that's why that's so effective. Is they're just not really sure what they're doing. They're seeing something different, and they don't know how to react, and they don't. And this is a rabbit hole I'm trying not to go down, but yeah.
But it has to be said, though, because you may encounter this sooner or later against a team that's organized all their energy around defense, and if somebody says, I don't know how to break in, I can't break in, it's like, well, by yourself you probably can't. So you need other options, and that's where, again, it's about the team as a whole, not just what can I do to make myself effective in the way that I want to be, but how can the entire team work toward this goal of eliminating the other team, or worst case scenario, outscoring the other team, because that's partly what the totem pole is good at, is piling up those points, because they're getting a 3 or 4 to 1 advantage against you every time you come in, and you don't want that.
I think a lot of something that's missing from a lot of people's game is the ability to actually communicate effectively with their team. Lots of people will be focused on just what they're doing, rather than taking like 20 seconds to have a quick power meeting in a game, which 20 seconds is a long time. But if you're encountering something that is not working, like I see it a lot actually in our arena, that like a scout will be trying to break into another team's resupply, and they just can't break it, and they just keep coming in and doing this, and they're just getting the same result. A lot of people don't take the time to be like, okay, I need to maybe take a step back, and if my commander is getting some resupply, I'll go and say, hey, I need you to come with me right now. We're going to go and do a coordinated attack, or something like that, something to that extent. They just, you get a lot of people who play as individuals in a Space Marines, and it really is a team game. Like you have to approach it with teamwork.
When it's played at its highest level, it is very much a team game.
Mm-hmm.
Hero Ball will take you so far.
Yeah, and I would probably classify the totem. What I would say with the totem is one of the many things we teach players is we look at individual plays, micro plays and large scale, team strategies, whatever, big macro plays. We basically classify them to three categories. We classify them into reactive gameplay, proactive gameplay, and then what I define as kind of a branch off of proactive gameplay is predictive gameplay. And so, what you're looking at a given scenario is you're saying the enemy team is trying to control the game in this manner. Am I reacting and giving them what they want, or am I playing my own game? Right? Running into the totem pole is a reactive play. You are reacting to their attempt to control the game. Or am I playing proactively by, for example, playing the 6-on-2? Having all of our players shoot their 3 hits and ignore the rest. And I think people, especially, we have so many young, I don't want to say dumb, hot-headed young kids who are commander powerhouses who have never thought about, even the slightest bit, have never put even the slightest bit of critical thinking into the game whatsoever. And they just brute force the resupply for 15 minutes. And if it works, they win. If it doesn't, they lose. And they've got into this, this mindset where, they're not really they're not thinking critically about their game. They're not, doing that kind of thing, and they're just simply in this case they're reacting to what the enemy team's attempt to control the game instead of thinking about it and playing their own game and trying to change the course of the game. And in this case.
Well, that's the difference between like general laser tag versus Space Marines, right? Because you can have that mentality playing laser tag, like that's the name of the game. Just shoot the other people and try and do that more times than everyone else. But that's Space. That's the glory of Space Marines. That's what makes it such a good game. Is it's not just I'm gonna go and shoot people.
Right.
That's not just what the game is. That, I mean, I don't know. That's I guess part of that, right? Like, yeah. Well, I really like your take on Space Marines.
Yes.
I can't wait until the day that you guys start doing some of the online courses for Space Marines.
Yeah, that's.
I honestly, tactics and strategy for all you idiots out there.
Yeah, I think that if I don't know, I definitely want to get some of the basics and stuff out there. I don't think there's anyone willing to sit around long enough to hear all I have to say.
I don't know
which
about that.
Which is a lot. I mean,
I
Inferno and I
respectfully
still
disagree.
Inferno and I still joke.
Just get yourself a podcast. Every idiot on the internet has a podcast.
But I actually hired Inferno. He worked at the Laser Force Place with me for years, and on his job application, he put decent at laser tag, and I chuckle every time I see that because I used to see that all the time, and I think that's really funny because, well, I mean, it's all relative, right? I mean, you're decent compared to whom, I guess. But we worked together. I probably taught him 20 hours a week for years. And he still hasn't heard the end of it. And people come to me all the time. They're like, I want you to teach me how to play laser tag. He's like, no, don't ask that. You'll actually careful what you ask for, because you might get it. And but
it was eye opening because like I got to experience it, like a taster, of that when I was traveling with you guys, traveling back from Colorado, and then obviously like many hours of car rides and sitting around airports and stuff, and like it it's a fountain. It's a fountain of knowledge, and you'd be surprised, man. Like, I think a lot of people find like value in that, and the people that don't, maybe, I don't know. Maybe will never be. It's important to be open to learning stuff. Is the way that I put it. I think so anyway. I think there's great value in it. But you'd be surprised, man. Like, we talk a lot of shit on this podcast, and people seem to be amused by it. So.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
500 people apparently.
Yeah, 500 people. That's pretty good. Honestly, when you said that, I was like, what? 500 is that's a good number. I mean,
stoked.
Yeah.
Absolutely stoked. And there is a very there's a portion of that 500 that are here for the Laser Force content. And then a portion of that they're here for the other dumb shit that we do.
Other people want to see Steve play with Legos.
Exactly right. Or play with Gray, one of the two.
Yeah,
I'm better at Lego. But yeah, like we're pretty stoked, man. Like, and we couldn't have done that without the initial support of our Laser Force community, our Laser Force family, because a lot of people who get started with streaming don't have a pre-built audience. Like we were doing the podcast. We were doing the podcast obviously prior, but not only that, like Laser Force is so niche. Like, our community will probably back any like reasonably entertaining media that like talks about the thing that we love. So like, we definitely had a head start, but it's nice that people kind of come in and join the community and learn a little bit, and really dig it. Do you guys want to do you make any final points, or did we miss anything? I mean, obviously this is, like you said, Thunder, we could talk about this shit for hours and hours.
I thought we had another 4 hours to go.
Well, that's the problem. Is I hate this kind of thing, especially like in this type of environment, is so hard for me because, like one of the first things that I try to teach people. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole here. But in the tournament of Detroit a few years ago, Trinity came up to me and she was playing Commander on her team, and she said, "Okay, I went to Scythe and I asked him how to play Commander, and he gave me some tips. And then it was Rusty, and I asked him about how to play Commander, and he gave me some tips. And then they said, come to you and you'll give me some tips." I said, "Great, I'll give you some tips." So we sat there and talked for an hour, and I didn't say anything about Commander for a whole hour.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say anything about Commander. Well, here's the thing: is if we're talking about, getting good or whatever, let's say we're building like a pyramid, for example. Our bottom few layers are the fundamentals of the game, right? The absolute most, basic aspects of the game that kind of stack and stack and stack on top of each other. Well, here's the problem about me teaching you Commander in this scenario. We have our base level, and then way up the pyramid is Commander. Well, you're missing all of these pieces down here, all these fundamentals, all these the whole bottom of the pyramid. I mean, the majority of the bottom of the pyramid is missing. So for us to attempt to build this structure from the middle isn't going to work. I can sit here and teach you for hours how to nuke, but you're not getting nukes. So what good is that going to do? There is a whole lot of information that you are missing here. So we talked about Commander for an hour without talking about Commander at all. We talked about the very most basic fundamentals of the game. Let's talk about how to get resupply. Let's talk about, opportunities. Let's talk about ways to look for good times to get resupplied. And let's talk about some interactions with your teammates and on and on and on. So these types of things are hard. And that's why, I think if I started, some type of, I don't know, online teaching thing, at the very least, we would definitely start with, with the basics, some maybe more into the specifics of the basics. Because that's what the majority of people need anyway. But I think this type of thing is so hard because like we kind of picked this random like kind of like block in the middle here, and then I guess I should have pulled it up, but I wrote a thing. I've written a lot of things, but I wrote some specifics about maybe 10-20 page explanations about some of the most of the positions for kind of our advanced players to read. And and one of them, all the new players really wanted to read it, and I said, okay, but let me explain to you something first. And I said in it, and I wish I had it pulled up so I could read it, but I said something to the effect of, this is meant for advanced players with a wide amount of information that you are missing, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to detail things in here that need to be done. You're going to attempt to do things and fail at them. The reason you're failing at them is not because I'm teaching you the wrong way. The reason you're failing at them is because you don't understand how and why and where and when these should be implemented correctly, and you're just kind of blindly doing whatever. But I mean, I do think we talked about some good things. We didn't really cover much heavy. We mostly covered resupply, but that works.
I think that's good because you kind of said one of the things that I was hoping you would say without saying this sentence specifically, which is like defense is important, but you can't just talk about defense in Legendary because it's all part of one thing. It's not like in other sports where it's like, oh yeah, the team that has the ball, they're on offense, and the other team doesn't have the ball, so they're on defense. It's like everybody has the ball all the time in like 6 different areas. There are 12 balls that are flying around the field constantly.
Right? Yeah, pretty much.
So you just need to be fielding them and able to pivot from defense and offense and vice versa, just kind of on a dime. So I mean, that's why I kind of wanted to throw the topic out there to be like, are there specific things we think about with defense in mind? It's like, but there's always that little asterisk of, yeah, but you can't just think of this as, okay, this is this one specific thing that doesn't touch 15 other different topics as part of laser tag also.
Yeah, this is not a training course. This is like our thoughts on our very broad thoughts on some our very individual thoughts on a very broad subject. But I think this
is Troy Lede with a conspiracy theory board. Let's just be real about what this is.
But I think that's why like you said, I don't know who's going to want to watch it. I think that's why the majority of our community would watch it, because it's distilled knowledge from a perspective that you don't often get without decades of playing this game, and even then you don't, or some people are not necessarily going to get those.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I do think that that's actually something, in a way that I think the community kind of needs, in that I think, one thing I kind of tell our players is you're lucky to be starting now, to the new people, because, you can really only become as good as the best player you have to practice against.
We know so much more than we did before.
And what's fascinating, what I can't stop thinking about, I think about this all the time, is that I started in like 2002 and I played weekly for, till now. And what took me 15 years to learn, that we have players who have been playing for a year, 2 years, that are as good or better than I was after 15. Look at someone like Snuffles. The guy started in like 2018.
Yeah, I was gonna say Snuffles and Caleb come to mind.
Yeah, when Snuffles started, when Snuffles went to the West Coast, the last West Coast in Loveland, he had played 15 Space Marines games. He started 4 years ago, and after a year and a half, he would have beat me to death at the point I was just a few years ago.
Yeah.
Because they just get fast tracked through all this that I had to learn through blood, sweat, and tears, and hours of staying up at night. So that
these
part
kids
could be
have
good
it
for the
too
community.
easy.
gun telling them how many lives they've got, and all this terrible.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
But I think that's an exciting prospect for our community. Is if you bring people with talent like through and give them the knowledge quicker, they tend to get good very quickly. Yeah. But yeah, we do our best on this show, but like, you know, don't take advice from this guy, or at least, you know, maybe not here.
Right.
Right. Well, let's put that pin in it.
Sounds good.
We'll let DK go off and watch his basketball. But like,
We haven't been doing that in the background while we've been talking. Not at all.
but Ace, thank you so much for coming on, man. Like I could listen to you talk about Laser Force like for hours and hours and hours, and like I get lost in the stuff that, not lost, I get like captivated by what you're saying, and I found myself earlier like forgetting that I was, you know, streaming. I forgot that I was like supposed to be mildly entertaining. I was just,
I'm the host of this damn show.
yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Boy, that's really cool. But yeah, thank you so much, dude, for coming on and like giving us a wee thimble.
Yes,
from the pool of
something
your
like
knowledge.
that. Yeah, it's good. I love being on. It's, you know, every
6
time I'm
months.
on, I'm like, oh yeah, let's do it.
Always great to have
Let's
you.
go.
I can't wait to come hang out with you again as well. Like, I don't know when it'll be. Hopefully, are you any rough plans are coming down here next year? Is it on the cards?
But me, Caleb, and Snuffles all have plans to go. Snuffles got a real big tax return. I said, listen, open a new account, put it all in there, throw away the key.
Don't put it on Bitcoin.
Yeah. So I think the three of us definitely have plans to go. Hopefully that all stays the same. But
oh yes,
I plan to go.
Oh, amazing. I can't wait to see you guys down here. I think you guys are gonna have a great time in our arena, because really our arena, out of all the arenas that I've played, is I think like the one that has training wheels on it. It's very easy. But yeah, thanks man. We will obviously look to have you on again at some stage in the not too distant future, because you bring a wealth of knowledge with you. So thank you.
Cool.
This week, what do we got coming up? Just general. Dinky, you're away next week. Is that right?
Yes, most likely.
Yeah. Okay. We'll figure that out closer to the time.
Yeah.
So it may just be me and Than again, or maybe we don't do a show next week. We'll see. I've got some.
Figure it out.
We actually, for anyone that's keen, anyone in Auckland who is potentially keen to come hang out, we're having sort of somewhat of a community meetup with some of the Twitch community members next Friday night in Auckland City. So if you're around and you want to come hang out, yeah, I see you, Jen. If you want to come hang out and get some food and have some general good times with us, flick me a message. I'll send you the details. It'll be a very cool evening, I think. But for this week, this guy, I've been Guy Next Door.
I've been DK.
I've been here too. I'm Thunder.
Yes.
I've been here too.
And I am also here too as well. Always remember to backtrack, kids. It's really good for your defense. We will see you next week. Ka kite anō. Have a good week.
I've been throwing daggers in the places I want